And then there's the crazy ones like us who are, got our hair in a bun and makeup on at 5:30 because we're like, let's go, showmanship day.
Bring them in on the rail, let it jog, please. On the rail, let it jog.
All right, everyone. We are back with another On the Rail podcast. This week we have Miss Meg DePalma Pye on with us, and we're very excited to get to talk to her. So before we get into it, Meg, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself and who you are, where you're at, what you do, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. My name is Megan. Everyone calls me Meg. I know that it's a stranger if they call me Megan because I haven't been called Megan since pretty sure I was born. So, but I actually live in North Augusta, South Carolina, which is about 2 miles over the Georgia line. So when everyone asks where that is, I live in Augusta, Georgia. I mean, you can spit throw into Augusta, but I'm technically South Carolina resident. I live here with my husband, Preston, and my Bernese mountain dog. Lots of people have met him before. His name is Bruce Wayne. He is quite famous for his antics at the horse show, but he lives here. And my husband's actually in nurse anesthetist school. He's getting his doctorate. So he's actually not here most of the time. He's doing his clinical rotations around the Southeast. So it's me and Bruce Wayne. And when I'm not showing horses, I'm a sales executive for a financial company.
Wow. I love big, hairy dogs. Yeah. So I'm already in love with yours.
Yeah. Well, he's 140 pounds of mischief. So if you ever want to have a house bear come stay with you, let me know and I will ship him your way.
Yeah. If only you were next door, I would take you up on that. Cool. Well, I know you are recently married, so congratulations for that. And just real quickly, would you like to give us a 30,000 foot view kind of how that day went? And I saw a few pictures online of your ceremony, whatever, and it looked beautiful.
Yeah, I will always brag on the wedding. So Preston and I actually got married on March 26th of this year. We picked our favorite Georgia city. So obviously being from Augusta, Preston didn't want to get married in Augusta, and I'm from upstate New York. So all of my family had to travel in anyway. So we chose to get married in Savannah. So if y'all have been, it's the most, I think, by far the best Georgia city. I mean, it has history, it's got charm, it has art, it has, all the things that you look for in a city. So we got married in Savannah at the mansion in Forsyth. So a very iconic historic building in Savannah across from Forsyth Park. And we didn't honeymoon actually right after the wedding. We actually honeymooned in May when Preston had a break from school. We went to Barbados in May and had a blast. But overall, our wedding was awesome. We did our reception right in Savannah. We got married in the marble courtyard of the mansion. And then our cocktail hour was in the lounge. And we turned around and went into the ballroom for our reception. And we had probably about 120 people, which was good for us because quite honestly, the mansion didn't hold a bunch. We would have loved to invite all of our friends and family across, our horse show friends and family. It wasn't capable for us to do that. So we tried to keep it as small, as intimate and possible. But I think we had about 120 that came in for the wedding. It was awesome. It was windy as hell though. Goodness gracious. And the pictures, I'm literally, people are like, oh, Meg, what'd you do to your hair? I was like, I don't know, just trying to keep my hair together. I mean, the wind was like 30 mile an hour winds, and our photographer, Callie and Justin, were awesome. They're like, all right, your eyes are watering, Meg. And I'm like, yeah, well, because I'm getting pounded with wind.
Oh my.
It was a 75 degrees and just very windy, but who cares?
I do have to ask, after or being married myself, so do you remember the day and everything that went through it, or did it fly by so fast that you had to kind of stop and think and take it in afterwards?
Honest to God, I was pretty laid back. I wasn't a bridezilla by any means. I just kind of let stuff roll. Honestly, I feel like I remembered a lot of stuff, One thing that I do remember was the fact that I feel like it took forever. The day did, which a lot of people are like, "Oh, Meg, it goes super fast." For me, up into the ceremony when I was walking down the aisle, that's when everything started to go fast. But when I woke up until 5 o'clock when they opened the doors to announce me, I'm like, it just took forever. It felt like it took 20 hours. I'm like, oh my God, let's move this along.
Should have had a morning wedding, and then you could have had the whole rest of the day for the fun stuff.
I mean, it felt like that. It felt like this is the longest day. And then once I was announced Mrs. Preston Pye, and then it flew by. And then here we are. We're doing our send off, and I actually hired one of my clients who is a financial advisor, also is a fire breather. So what a dynamic, right? So not only are you telling people how to manage your money, but he owns his own fire breathing business and he does it across the country. People hire him for events. And I just happened to remember that when I was planning the wedding, I said, you know what's going to be very extra, but very cool, and not a lot of people are going to do it, is to get a fire breather for their wedding. So our little send off, we had, his name is Jimmy the Pyro, if you want to look him up. But Jimmy the Pyro, he came and did fire breathing and all of these crazy different fire dances and explosive. It was really cool. It was extra, but it was cool. And I hope that people remember it forever. And it was pretty cool. So.
Do you think we'll ever be seeing Jimmy the Pyro at a horse show anytime?
You know what? I mean, I bet you Jimmy would do about anything. So, if someone had interest to set fire to something or to breathe fire at some sort of big event, I'm sure we could pay him to travel. He lives in Atlanta.
That could get interesting at a horse show, but entertaining probably.
Exactly. I mean, horses are afraid of, tents and flags and balloons. I wonder if they saw fire blowing up in the air.
Fire breathing. Yeah. Awesome. Well, on that note, why don't you tell us a little bit how you got your start in the horse industry?
So I actually got my start. My mom, her name is Sue. Mom lives in outside of Lake Hartwell in Clemson, South Carolina. So Mom actually showed quarter horses when she was growing up as an amateur. So she didn't start as a youth. She started as an amateur. She had 2 sorrel geldings that I remember when I was little, and she showed on the AQHA circuit, and she got me into riding. I grew up on a cow farm. My dad was a Holstein farmer. My mom was a high school English teacher. So we had a little Holstein farm and 6 stalls in a barn, and Mom had her 2 geldings, and I started on them in our field with, no lessons, just Mom teaching me, how to post and this, that, and the other. And then I went into 4-H and did a little 4-H, hunt seat, and Western. I actually took lessons in jumping. I think we all did. Anyone who ever has shown horses, I feel, has jumped at some point in their life. I remember taking jumping lessons and jumping oxers backwards and all this crazy stuff. And now I'm scared to death. People are like, do you want to jump? I'm like, no, I don't want to jump. It scares me to death. When I was young, I had no fear. Now I'm old and I can't afford to break a bone. So no, I don't want to jump. But I started jumping. And then I think the first year that I showed myself as a youth, I was 14. So it was my last year, in 13 and under was my first quarter horse year. So it's been a minute, but I'm pretty sure my first time showing quarter horses was my last year in 13 and under. And we lived in upstate New York. So I used to show in the Elmira Horsehead Circuit, in the Erie County Fair, if y'all are familiar with the horse shows up there. And I did a few Pennsylvania shows, Harlansburg and those type of things. But the majority, I stayed local to where I was, upstate New York.
That is very cool. I assume the hunter jumper or the jumper stuff is probably there's a lot of that up there in that part of the world, I guess is what I'm saying. So that would be a natural thing to gravitate to.
Yeah, there was. And I mean, it did teach me a lot, but I still now as an amateur, I don't know my diagonals. I'm going to be a novice here until I die, as much as, everyone who gets a hold of me like, oh, I can teach you your diagonals. I'm like, okay, well, it's been over 30 years. You let me know if you can teach my diagonals. I can't feel them. I have to look. I'm never going to be a great equitator. So even though I started in the jumping world and that's where I got my base, the diagonals never stuck with me. So
sometimes you just got to own it and just own it and roll with it, right?
I will fall on the sword when I need to. And that is a fault of mine. I will not learn my diagonals. I haven't yet. And I don't think I ever will.
I love the honesty here right now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I can appreciate that too. So, all right. Well, I know you are very accomplished as a show showmen, showwomen nowadays. So what kind of are your highlights of the awards you have won over the years?
You know what? I feel like I've been pretty blessed. A lot of my horses have done well on their own. I have had horses, owned horses, still own horses that have been Congress champions, NSBA world champions, AQHA world champions. I myself won the Congress a few times. I've won the NSBA World Show a handful of times. The one thing that I don't have under my belt that, is still on my list that I am aspiring to do is to get a globe at the AQHA World Show, level 3 stuff. I was a level 2 reserve world champion, but we all want the coveted globe, regardless of the color. Of course, I would love the gold, but if I was second or third in the level 3 at the World Show and the type of quality of amateurs that I compete with, I would be tickled with that. So I've been blessed. I've had a lot of wonderful horses that I've owned and still own, and I myself have won the Congress, won the NSBA World Show several times, but I've yet to break into that top 3 in the level 3 of the AQHA World Show. Been top 5, been top 10, just pushing along for a globe. That's my goal.
Those darn globes seem to be the most elusive prize for the majority of people out there, which is cool. I mean, it makes it that much more satisfying when you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you do win. And I know it's only a matter of time before you get yours. So.
Well, thank you. I'm hoping. Before I die.
You got like a couple years left.
A couple more years. I'm waiting until I get into select.
Hey, those gals are super tough too. Yeah. What horses are you showing this year?
So I actually have 3 mares. I got my girls. I have Marley and Marley Sue. She's Don't Think Twice. She's my all-around mare that I have with Clint Ainsworth. And then I have 2 futurity hunt seat horses this year. I have a 3-year-old hunt seat mare. We call her Baby Kate. Her name's Prettiest of All. And then I have a 2-year-old. Her name is Side Piece, and we call her Minnie. So I have a 2-year-old hunt seater, a 3-year-old hunt seater, and then I have Marley Sue, who does the all-around stuff.
On the mare note, do you like showing mares over geldings, or do you have a preference?
So a little thing about me that most people know that are in my barn, and quite honestly, people who don't. So I am a very laid back rider. I have a lot of faults. And one of those is I'm not aggressive. I'm not going to kick one hard. I'm not going to pull on one hard. And, they'll yell at me till they're blue in the face. Kick harder, use more leg, pull that one. It's a joke. At this point, I'm the one that's going to kick them a little bit. Keith Miller says I just flutter my legs and I pet them and say, good girl, and we go forward. So honestly, I get along with mares. When we bought Marley from Blake and Kent Ray, they said doesn't get along with a lot of people. Marley's very particular, and we just hit it off. Marley, I'm fair to her. I'm good to her. She's not one that you get on and gut and pull and kick because you get in a fight and you're not going to win. So, I feel like the mares and me get along because I don't pick at them. I don't start a fight with them. I just, quite honestly, ask them nicely and say, come on, let's go do this. And I seem to get along with mares. Geldings are easier. I mean, I'm not saying that, I would much prefer a gelding because I feel like they're big and dumb and you can do whatever you want to them and you're not going to hurt their feelings and they're just going to go. I mean, yes. Harley, my hot run on a Harley that I had for 5 years, he's my beloved, my dog. He, you could kick him, pull him, do whatever. Harley didn't give a hoot about much. And same thing with my hunt seat gelding Pax, Sleeping. He's the same way. He was super easy. The mares are very difficult. Some classes they are in a good mood. Some classes they're not. But when it comes to me, I feel like as a rider, I get along with mares because I'm not super aggressive. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of amateurs out there whom I aspire to be that aggression level that probably don't get along with mares just because of the spicy dynamic of the two things. So
very true.
So you have your 2 futurity hunt seaters, and then what all the events do you show Marley in for the all around?
So Marley Sue and I pretty much do everything but the hunt seat equitation. Because again, I don't know my diagonals, and I'm pretty sure Clint is sick and tired of saying, change your diagonal. So I do the showmanship, the performance mares, the Western riding, the trail, the horsemanship. She actually has Congress champion in the Western pleasure, but I have no aspirations to do that anymore. And I don't think she does either. So we do pretty much all of the all-around events. We just don't cross over into the hunt seat. I'll save the hunt under saddle for the futurity girls. So
do you have a favorite class that you show in with her?
Yeah. So a favorite class across the board is showmanship. I have always loved the showmanship since I started when I was 14. I think it is a great class to show off a style. I also think it's a great class to be precise. I just enjoy watching it. I mean, I can sit and watch. I'll go watch the 14 through 18, even though it has nothing to do with me whatsoever, just because I enjoy watching it. Showmanship by far is my favorite class. I think Marley Sue's favorite class is probably the showmanship as well. She's a showmare. She goes in and she shows all the time. When I watch videos of myself doing the showmanship, her ears are always up. She's just happy doing it.
That's
and
great.
She's also a very quick learner, and can be tricky because if you practice too much, I mean, I'm screwed. Like she knows where I'm turning before I even turn. So Marley is one that you just have to put the pieces. When Clint and I practice, we put the pieces together, but we don't do it all at once. We might back 2 horse lengths, do 2 360s, walk forward, stop, and then we'll take a break and do the rest of the pattern later because she is just wicked smart. But I would say showmanship by far is my favorite class.
Cool.
Showmanship is something you either love or you hate.
I know, it's so true. And I would say probably 50-50. Most people are like, I hate that class. I will never do it ever again. And then there's the crazy ones like us who are, got our hair in a bun and makeup on at 5:30 because we're like, let's go. Showmanship day.
Yes, that's so true.
I'm definitely the other half of that 50. I have no desire whatsoever to ever do showmanship again in my life. I am not that energetic about it. That's for sure.
It does require like an amount of energy in yourself too, to even go through the class, regardless from nailing all of the maneuvers and whatever, there has to be like an aura about you. At least the top level showmanshippers like Meg can pull that off pretty well, make it look flawless. The rest of us have a little bit of work to do there.
Listen, you just have to look like you're not dying. It's really, my best advice for showmanship. When you're trotting 14 square corners, extended trot to a walk and all that stuff, you just have to keep your breathing pattern well. So it doesn't look like you're out there puffing and puffing, bent down, trying to catch your breath. I mean, a lot of that, especially when you get to the Congress and the World Show level, I mean, some of those patterns,
they just get bigger.
I'm thinking to myself, all right, Meg, you better take a deep breath before you go out there because you're going to need it.
I would definitely be huffing and puffing at the judge setting up. Like, yeah, it would just not be pretty.
So the patterns keep getting bigger and longer and lots of trotting in them. All right. Well, you said you are a marketing director for a financial company. So I think one question all of us like to kind of know with top level amateurs is what I call it, the quote, big kid job is that, supports this hobby of ours, which is, questionable at times. But how has your career and showing horses kind of integrated and worked or not worked together?
So I couldn't agree more with that crazy hobby. What I do is I work for an investment company and I sell investments to financial advisors, and I create retirement concepts and talk about financial plans for people, which is wild because when people ask me what I do in horses, I'm like, do not do it, right? It's not a good idea. Horses and retirement and savings and a strong and retirement portfolio, they don't go together. They don't go together at all, which is wild. I tell people, like, do as I say, not as I do. So I just had my 15th anniversary working at Prudential just a couple of days ago. So actually I started out of college. I went to college for corporate finance and speech communications, and I was dual majored, and they hired me right out of college. And I have just been there ever since. And quite honestly, so when I graduated college, my mother, who was wonderful enough to pay for my horse habit until I graduated college. And when that happened, she said, good luck. And I, that's the type of parenting that I will be hopefully one day in my life. And that's the type of parenting I wish more people had, that kind of, okay, you're an adult now, you can figure this out on your own. Because what that made me do is at the time I had a mare. I think I sold her for $8,500. And I took that plus $1,500. I had $10,000, and I went to Keith Miller, who I've been with. I have a client of his and family of his for now 11 years, almost 12 years. And I said, Keith, I have 10 grand. And he said, Maggie, we'll find something. And he found me a gelding who had some soundness issues that I purchased for $15,000. And I turned around and had 18 out of 21st in the Western Pleasure as a novice. And I sold him and made $20,000 on him, and turned around and put that 20 back in and bought one for, 50 and sold that one. And I have just bought and sold to where I am now. And obviously my career has blessed me with the fact that I have been able to do this at a high level with multiple wonderful horses. And I do this all on my own. And I have since I was 21 years old. But it came down to, I bought a Congress trophy saddle, was my first purchase. I paid $2,200 for it, dyed it black, and that was my show saddle. So when I had my $15,000 pleasure horse and I was out there as a novice amateur, I had my Congress trophy saddle dyed black. I made horse show clothes work, and I started, and I just kept pushing and selling horses and putting points on them and selling them for more. And now here we are 10 years later, and I'm very blessed to be able to do this. But my mom, bless her, she paid for me all throughout. I was, my youth career and into my college career, and said, all right, kid, out you go. And if I wanted to show horses, that's what I had to do. I had to make it work, and I did.
That's a really cool story. I don't think most people probably have any idea about some of the background or the backstory about that. They see you now, as a very, very competitive amateur, but they don't know that, how back at, and one day you hustled your way up there. You didn't just, give it all given to you. So thank you for sharing that.
No. And I feel like there's 4 groups of amateurs. And I say this, my friends that I talk more at the horse shows, right? There's your collegiate amateurs. Those are those girls that are riding in college, that are now that over that youth 14 and 18 mark. Now they're an amateur, and they're amazingly talented because all they do for their day is ride collegiate horses, right? They're riding at these big schools, and they're amazing. And then you have your horse trainer spouse kid amateurs, right? Mm-hmm. You have the people who are married to a horse trainer, or you have the people who were born into it and their parents are horse trainers. And then you have parent funded amateurs, and bless them, right? Out of jealousy, I wish I was one. I wish I was one that had their parents who continued to fund this entire habit. And then the last part of us are your self-funded amateurs. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you look at the amateur division, which is a little scary because it's not growing, the only thing that's happening is your 14 through 18 youths are coming up into amateurs. That's the only thing that's happening. There's no new amateurs that pop up. You're in one of those 4 categories, right? You're either a collegiate rider, you either are married to one or a child of a horse trainer. Your parents either pay for it or you're self-funded. And I think the latter of the bunch, your self-funded amateurs, is the smallest category that we have. And unfortunately, I think the way that the industry is going with how expensive everything is getting, the horse shows, the price of the horses. I mean, I work in finance. I mean, I understand inflation. I understand all of that. I don't think that has anything to do with it. It's just the fact that people are getting priced out of this. And if you don't make a decent amount of money, you can't afford to do it, which is sad because we all got into this horse world because we love to do it. We enjoy riding horses. We love the animals. And unfortunately, not a lot of people are going to be able to keep up with it because they just can't afford to do it.
Preach.
Yeah.
It's I
100% relate to the self-funding amateur status. And that brings me to a question. What would you say to, let's just say, somebody that just graduated high school or is coming out of college and they would want to self-fund their show career? What advice would you give them at that moment, at that young age, like 18 or 21? Like, what would you say to them?
Well, I think if they're already showing, you're already showing you're, 14 through 18, you're at a high level. You've probably already tasted a little bit of success, right? You're already probably riding in a $15,000 blue ribbon. You probably already have your Lindsay James or your Paula's outfits because your parents have purchased them for you. You almost have to kind of say, okay, that was then, now this is now. And you have to realize that I'm going to have to go backwards before I can go forwards. If I want to do this on my own as an adult, you know what? Maybe I can't have that $15,000 saddle, or maybe I can't afford to spend $6,000 on a showmanship jacket. And you know what? Maybe I'm not going to go out there and be top 3 at the Congress every year because my horse is not the quality of horse that it takes to get to that level. And you have to be okay with that. We all have to start somewhere as an adult, as a self-funded individual. And sometimes I feel like kids and adults, all of us, no one likes to take a lifestyle change to the back, right? Everyone wants to continue to push forward and have more luxuries and live a better life. But unfortunately, sometimes I think in the horse world, when you're stepping out of that, my parents are paying for it, now I am paying for it. You have to, unless all of a sudden you graduate college and you're making $150,000 and you have disposable income that you can throw at these animals, you're not going to be able to keep up with the lifestyle that you've had as a youth as you transfer into an amateur if you're trying to do it on your own. And you have to be okay with that. You have to acknowledge that I'm not going to be able to afford to live and to show like I have for the past however many years because my parents aren't paying for it anymore. And some people are turned off by that. And some people don't like it. Some people, once they taste that success and realize this is what I want, they don't want to be 10th or they don't want to be a finalist because their horse isn't nice enough or whatever the case may be. But we all have to start somewhere. We gotta go back and work for it. And, I'm living proof that it does work if you do it well enough.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, with your job, has it been flexible enough to allow you to go to shows? Do you work from home? Is it all remote? How does that work for you?
So I create my own schedule. I have a scheduler and she books, I tell her where I want to go and she books all of my appointments and all of my travel and all that stuff. So I'm pretty lucky in that perspective that if I know that I have a show coming up, I can block that week off and I don't have to work. But I will say that COVID definitely allowed us to do some crazy things with this virtual world. So now even while I am away at a horse show and I'm not showing a Tuesday and a Thursday, I can have a full day of virtual meetings and still talk to clients and still do firm meetings and all of that good stuff and still work and still stay on the pulse of what's happening in my career, but not have to take the time off of work. That is definitely something that I've always been since I've been in this position. That's been great is I do create my own schedule. So if I do need to take time off, I do get to get time off. But there is, definitely, I think that more and more nowadays, the horse shows are just getting so long. And at the Big A this year, I had a conversation with Kathy from Equine Production. Mm-hmm. And, we were just talking, just casually, chewing the fat. And she said, "What do you think about this?" I'm like, "Kathy, I mean, I can't afford, let alone be out of the pocket for 10, 15, 12 days at a time anymore. It's just getting to the point where these horse shows are just so long and they're few and far between. You either go to a 2-week horse show or you have no horse shows to go to because the small horse shows, unfortunately, are just, no one is supporting them, I guess. I don't really know exactly what's happening. I'm not in those conversations, but I do know that is hard. It is hard. And if I didn't have a flexible schedule, there's no way that I'd be able to take 14 days off for the NSBA World Show, 14 days off for the Congress, 14 days off for the AQHA World Show. Most people who work for a living and work to pay their horses cannot take that much time off. And I think as an industry, they have to do some changes moving forward because it's going to get to the point where your amateur group and even your youth kids who have to go to school, for God's sake. I mean, mm-hmm. I never got 2 weeks off of school in a public school. I can tell you my mother as a teacher would be like, you're going to school on Monday. I'm like, okay. So I'm really not sure how the youth kids do it and are able to take that much time out of school, let alone an amateur who has to report into a career or a job. But I do have that luxury that I do schedule my own so I can still work while I'm at the shows or take time off if I know ahead of schedule.
I think there's irony in that the shows are so long and it costs a lot of money, of course, for these bigger shows. But yet the only way you afford these bigger shows is to have a good job or be working. Yeah. But those things don't match well together, in a logistical sense. So
yeah, I would love to see, what I was chatting with Kathy over the summer. I would love to see those Thursday to Sunday shows come back. In a lot of them, like plug six judges into 4 days. I don't even know if that math works, as far as what it costs to run a horse show that I'm not abreast to, but, pack 6 judges into 4 days. Let's go back to, leaving on a Wednesday after work and being able to come back on a Monday and not feeling like I've been run over by a bus because I've been horse showing for 2 weeks. I mean, I think that would help not only some of these smaller organizations get profitable again and we could get more novice people to get involved because they're more local. They don't have to fly and drive and do all that stuff. So I really hope as an industry, we bring back some of those smaller horse shows. I know that I would be a big fan of it. And I think, horse trainers, I can't imagine that, Clint and Keith, my two guys, love being away from their families for 2 weeks. I can't imagine that that's something that they, enjoy doing, but they have to because that's what pays the bills.
Very well said there. All right. Well, what would you say has surprised you the most about showing horses?
What surprised me the most? You know what? Probably what it shows about me. I know that's weird to tie it back to me, but in my personal life and in my business career and my corporate life, I'm very demanding, very aggressive, uber competitive. I hate to lose, all of those things. But when it comes to horses, I'm not saying that I go out to lose because I don't, right? For the amount of money that I spend, I go out there to have fun and be competitive. But I go out there and if things don't go my way, I'm not one to throw my sucker in the dirt, right? I'm not an individual who is going to, cut someone off. I mean, bless them, right? There are some amazing amateurs out there whom I admire and wish that I rode like. That I don't have the appetite to do that, right? I'm not an aggressive rider. I'm not mean to the horses. They're my pets. They're rotten. They're spoiled. They all have bad habits. Every single one of my animals have bad habits because I allow them to. So I would say what surprised me most about horses is just, I would say that if you saw me in my corporate career and then you see me when I ride horses and I'm, got a smile on my face and I come out and I'm like, oh, well, that didn't go well, and I laugh. And then you have other people who are just scowling and ripping their faces off their horses and they're so pissed off. I'm like, well, didn't win today. And I handle it completely different, which I think is the biggest surprise to me and the people who know me on both sides of the fence, corporate Meg versus horse show Meg. They're like, wow, right? I'm surprised you're not cutting the throat of that one. And I'm like, no, not her fault. She tripped. Right. And then you have me on the other side where I literally would, do things to my competition in the corporate world, just because I hate to lose. So it's just, I think that's the biggest thing that I take away from the horses is just what it does to me as an individual and how very different I am when it comes to animals versus when it comes to people.
Are you one to get nervous before you show, or are you like calm as a cucumber? Like what is it like when you're getting ready to show?
So funny and probably too much information, but I have a nervous bladder. And everybody in the barn, they're like, oh, where's Meg? She's probably peeing because I get nervous. I do get nervous, but I'm not the type of someone who pace. I don't pace. I don't, blare music or wear headphones or do like the whole Rocky thing. Like I'm not that kind of crazy person. I do get a little nervous and I do have a nervous bladder. Especially when it comes to the showmanship, there's always like, here, hold my horse. I'm 2 horses out. I have to go. So it's like one of those things. It's a joke in the barn. Everybody knows it. It's common knowledge about me. So I get nervous. I think I just, my heart beats a little fast, but I am not the kind of person who like sweats or smokes or, does anything like that has to break the nerves. So.
Have you always been like very chill with showing horses as far as you don't get too wrapped up in it? Like you were saying before, you've always been that way, or did you have some kind of like change in there as an amateur?
You know what? I think once, I won the Congress and won in the SB, I think once I hit a level and I started to win those big prizes and it's like, okay, I already won this, right? I think some of that pressure comes off of you. Now, where I think other people, you might ask that and that puts more pressure on them because I've already won and they're like, I got to stay at that level. But I feel like everyone has like a checklist and that checklist is, hey, I want to be competitive. I want to win in these 3 things. And that's what I want to do. And then once those boxes have been checked, I think for me, it takes some pressure off. I'm not saying that I don't want to go and win all those things and put in the hard work that it takes to get there because I absolutely do. I just think that maybe that shift in me happened once I won some of those bigger prizes and realized, hey, Meg, you've already done this. So you can let yourself relax and not put so much pressure on yourself. Don't put so much pressure on your trainers, your horses, and just go out and have fun because it's a crapshoot anyway. I mean, you have people judging you. Some of them are going to like you. Some of them are not. And, some of them are going to like your style and some of them aren't. And you can get mad about it and you can be angry about it and bitter about it. Or you just feel like, okay, we'll try again next time. And that's kind of more how I am.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to have and for all of us to kind of sit back and think about a little bit.
For sure.
When people ask me, so you pay to have people judge you?
We're all crazy. Yes.
It's really again out loud, really slow. So and I'm like, yeah, no, it sounds really bad. I pay to have people judge me and put me down, or, put me in a category that I don't want to be put in. Everyone wants to be very good in the 90s. And when you're in the 70s, you're like, wow, they really didn't like me today, but I paid you to tell me that.
Right.
When you say that to people who don't really understand what we do, they think we're crazy, and we are.
Yeah, we definitely are crazy.
I think we could list off like 100, number list of all the crazy things of horse people once you really start to think about like,
Jenna,
how much
that would be a good
it does
episode.
not make sense.
That would be a good episode to go down that path of how crazy horse people are. Just that list.
That's true. Consult husbands and boyfriends and outsiders to get it started, because I'm sure they have their good opinions of that too, with all the crazy horse girls out there. What is the best advice a mentor has ever given you about the horse world?
So I would probably give that to Keith Miller. So he has always told me since I started riding with him 11, 12 years ago, he says, Meggie, you have to have a plan, and then you have to have a plan B. And I think that goes, everyone should take that advice. Go in there with a plan, but you have to have a plan B, because there's a very good chance your plan A is going to blow up in your face. And if you don't have a plan B, whether it's, here's your track and your pattern, or if you're in the hunt seat class and someone cuts you off, or a horse starts to spook, you always have to have a plan B. You never stop riding. And that's what he, told me when I started riding with him. You have a plan, but then have a plan B. And I think that I have very much taken that into even my all around stuff with Clint, where, sometimes a pattern is going to start well, and in the middle it could get ugly, but at the end you could finish strong and just keep showing, and go to plan B if necessary, if plan A goes awry, but just don't stop showing. And I think that's probably the best advice that I was given to me, and that's what I try to stick to, is have my plan, but also have my plan B if that doesn't work.
What would you say is the most significant turning point in your show career?
I think one of the turning point that has stuck with me the most, and I think that has changed a lot about me. I still have a gelding sleeping. He goes by Pax, but he probably the best animal I'll ever own. He's wonderful. He's spoiled rotten at the Miller's house right now, getting fed whatever he wants, doing whatever he wants, and he deserves it. But to turn down a sale, to turn down a sale for a lot of money on a horse because he doesn't owe you anything, right? Like, he's so many time Congress champion, so many time world champion, never caused a problem for any of us. He was the best horse to ride, the best horse to be around, and he doesn't owe us anything. So the fact that we turned down a lot of money, where some people would be like, that's crazy. For me, I feel like that was a turning point. Like, I got to that point in my career, I was like, I don't need to sell him. He doesn't owe me anything. I would rather him be Charlie and Lincoln's pet in the field and do whatever he wants and be spoiled and be rotten and happy for the rest of his life than sell him and have him go from barn to barn to barn and be miserable for the rest of his life. So I think for me, that turning point was having a great animal and not putting a price tag on him, saying you can't buy him.
Do you feel you got any pushback for that at the time from anybody, not specifically saying Keith or the public or?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure people were like, behind the scenes, horse people doing what they do. I think Meg's crazy, right? I don't know why she wouldn't sell him. He's a gelding, why would you keep a hunt seat gelding, all this and that? But my family and the people who know Pax and the people who realize that he didn't owe us anything. I bought him I bought him his coming 2-year-old year. He filled every possible category that we needed him to do. He won everything we asked him to win. And he did it all with a smile on his little face. And it was like one of those things where I'm sure people thought I was crazy. I'm sure people were like, I don't know why that girl wouldn't sell him. But I didn't need to sell him. I mean, yes, could I have had the money? Absolutely. And for people to think about it, like, Meg, that's a big deal. But for me, it was more about he doesn't owe me anything. And I'd rather him be fat, hairy, and happy for the rest of his life being owned by me than anybody else.
Really, really cool. I love that.
You don't see or hear a lot of that happening in the, good graces of the horse deserving that. So that's really cool.
And now you guys see, he's so rotten, so spoiled. You yell to him, he turns and looks at you and he's like, I'm not coming. Can we have a cookie? And he's like, okay, I'll come to you. And then, when he thinks you're going to ride him, he's like, oh no, not today, Mom.
Not today. So he knows his status.
That's right. He gave Charlie Miller her first loping lesson. I mean, you learn to canter on packs. I mean, he's a good boy. He's worth his weight in gold, and he'll forever have a home.
Tell her that you may not always get to ride that kind of canter.
Yes.
It doesn't just happen all the time.
Yeah.
So you have horses in 2 different barns or with 2 different trainers. What is that like? Is it hard to juggle at the shows? Do your barns usually go to the same shows, and kind of what's the logistics of all of that?
People think I'm crazy. And at big horse shows, they always check on me to be sure that my health is okay, because it's a lot. At the NSBA World Show, I showed every single day, sometimes 3 times a day.
Wow.
With 3 horses in 2 different barns. So it's a lot. But I have been with Clint for 9 years. I've been with Keith for 12 years. So they both know that I have horses at each barn. So I will say to Clint, he'll say, hey, listen, be here at 4:00 to practice. And then I'll practice and say, okay, I'm going to go ride the hunt cedars. And I'll just go over to Keith's barn and I'll practice on the hunt cedars. So they're both very good about understanding that I have 2 different jobs while I'm there. One is the hunt seat for charity horses, and then one is the amateur all around. So they're both very good about that. Clint lives about 2 hours away from me, and Keith and Sydney live about 4.5 hours away from me.
Wow.
So I do see Marley, Sue, and Clint in that barn way more than I see the Miller bunch up in North Carolina. But Keith and I have a deal, right? They're 2 and 3-year-old for charity horses. You don't want non-pros riding them often. Anyway, for his job, he's like, Meg, you're fine. You don't need to practice every day on your 2-year-old. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But definitely with Marley and the amateur stuff, being able to lope over poles in the trail and practice lead changes, I do get to practice more with Marley and with Clint than I do with Keith and the hunt seat girls. But it is a lot. Most of the time, they do very similar shows, which I prefer. I prefer, if I'm going to send one, I want to send them all because I'm going. So I do like to hopefully ask, hey, listen, we're going to the Redbud. We're driving God knows how long over to Oklahoma. I would love for both barns to go versus just one barn, because if I'm already going to be there for 10 days, I'd rather have all the girls there to show versus just one. So I do try to keep my schedule where all of the horses go to one horse show, even though it's crazy while I'm there. It's financially fiscal. It makes more financial sense to send them all to one because I'm paying to be there anyway.
Sure, that makes sense. So I believe you said that you were originally planning on going to the fall championship show instead of Congress. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So when when the championship show was canceled, what happened for you? Have you decided to go to Congress? How does that involve your trainers and the barns and the other customers? Kind of update us there.
Yeah, so it was pretty wild. Both the hunt seat barn and the all around barn had agreed that everyone wanted to go spend October in Ocala at the Disney World of Horse Show Land at WEC. So neither barn was going to the Congress for this year, and we all basically got text messages and phone calls saying WEC has been canceled. And then we just kind of waited, and I talked to Sydney and Keith, and we had already paid up in the futurity stuff just in case. So my 3-year-old had been entered the early fees that we had to pay for the futurity stuff. So she was good, but I wasn't planning to take the 2-year-old. The 2-year-old couldn't go to WEC. So she was going to sit home. And then Clint called and said, we're switching gears. We're going to Columbus. So we were able, thank goodness, to get stalls. Everyone has shifted and everybody is going, both barns, all 3 girls are going to Columbus versus WEC. But it definitely was a wild 24 hours. I mean, we had a lot of phone calls, a lot of group chats going on, just trying to figure out who had the appetite to go up to Columbus, which I love the Congress. Don't get me wrong. Like, I would have preferred to go to the Congress myself just because I like the Congress. But for the horses, it's so hard on the horses that the Congress is just the environment versus, WEC is amazing. So I think it was more beneficial for the horses to go to WEC. I think I preferred me personally would have loved to go to the Congress, and now I get to go to the Congress, and unfortunately the horses just have to suffer a little bit more.
All that concrete.
more flapping flags and more people, more cold weather, and more concrete.
And your 2-year-old is a paint, though, just a paint, right?
Yes. So Mini Pie, side piece, she's a paint. So she is going to do the open twos, and then I'm going to show her in the non-pro twos.
Very cool. Well, at least she's getting to go now, because I'm sure she didn't want to sit at home while all you guys went to Florida.
Exactly. I'm sure Minnie would have been just so sorry that she had to veg in her stall for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So when is move-in day for you guys at Congress?
Great question. So I honestly have no idea when the horses are going up. I know that I and Bruce Wayne are going up on the 12th. So we are renting a car, and Bruce Wayne is going because obviously Preston is traveling for residency. So he's not home. And Bruce Wayne and I are getting in the car, and we're going to drive up to Columbus, and we're going to leave on October 12th. And then I am there for the rest of the horse show. So I'm there from the 12th to the 23rd, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
Because the amateur trail and the 2-year-old hunter under saddle goes on the last day, I believe, or the second to last day or something like that. So I'll be in Columbus from the 12th to the 23rd, I think.
Did you have any trouble finding accommodation so late in the game?
Well, lucky enough, I have a sister. She also shows horses, and she has a beautiful bus, and I am staying with her. So I called and said, do you want a roommate? And I'm surprised she didn't say no, but she didn't. And she's allowing Bruce Wayne and I to bunk up with her, because I'm sure at this point, I don't know what I would have found that's dog friendly, that I wouldn't have been murdered in my sleep up in Columbus, because those of us who know Columbus is not the best area. So you either fear for your life, or you stay in a camper on the showgrounds. So that's what I will be doing, Bruce Wayne and I.
Very cool. One of the hot topics in the industry right now is what to do with amateurs, and as far as allowing amateurs to give lessons to youth kids or beginners as a way to try and garner more, new blood into the industry. What's your take or opinion on that?
Well, it's just my opinion here. So let's just be
sure. Your opinion.
I don't think that an amateur should be paid, because that makes you not an amateur. So I don't care what you're getting paid for. If you're getting paid, you should not be an amateur. And that's just how I look at it. Do I agree? Do I think that the movement behind it to help new people get into the industry and to teach little kids and to try to get more people into the sport that we all love? Absolutely. I think it's necessary. I think that we need it, but I think that it needs to come from a trainer. I think it needs to come from a trainer from a lot of reasons, because that is your profession. And that is, sorry, I just want to say hello, Bruce Wayne. That is, that's their profession. That is what they're there to do. I would rather be coached from a trainer than, an amateur, just because of the knowledge. And I do feel like amateurs need to stay unpaid. And that's the way it is. I mean, if you have time to go out and teach lessons, you're a trainer. In my book, I don't care the level of which you are coaching, you're still being paid to do something that is done by a trainer. And therefore, to me, you should not be eligible to show in the amateur division with the rest of us who do not do this for a living.
I think that is the majority of the sentiment from most of the amateurs out there. And it seems that horse trainers too. Yeah. We'd like to get everybody's opinions on these things. So.
And I think I did see someplace on Facebook in one of my nightly scrolls that there are trainers that are starting businesses that are lesson businesses. And, I think the two of them in Texas are putting together like a lesson program that's available to beginners and young kids. And that's the kind of stuff we need. We need trainers to go back to the drawing board and get creative and think about different ways to bring in revenue, right? It's a business, and they should get compensated for their work. I just feel like it needs to come from a horse trainer that is their title, that is their occupation. And I think that there's enough people out there that have that title to help young kids and create lesson programs and do all that stuff. You don't need to get professional amateurs involved and for them to get paid.
the subject of professional amateurs is already enough of a Pandora's box without
Mhm,
actually
mhm.
allowing them to legally
Absolutely.
take
I mean, there's a few of
money.
them out there I would gladly send my horse to. That's how good they are.
Right,
You know, I
right.
show against you. You can here train my horse. You're that
Yeah,
good.
yeah. That's a whole nother
That's a
conversation
whole
for another day.
that's a whole nother ball of wax.
Alrighty. Well, while we are kind of wrapping things up here, what is one thing people would be surprised to know about you?
Um, hmm. Well, I am scared to death of spiders. Like to the point where I will wake up in the middle of the night and scream and think that they're crawling on me and things. I've fallen out of bed because I think that they're crawling on me. One time, my sister, who will happily tell you all of the embarrassing stories about me if you ever want to sit down and take some time to find out. But one of the times we were at a horse show in New York, and my sister and I were sleeping in the same bed. And I woke up, screamed bloody murder, and fell out of the bed. Tried to run away from the spider that I thought was crawling on me, and crashed on the floor, woke everyone else up in the room. My sister laughed probably for 45. I mean, she couldn't stop laughing. I am petrified of spiders. I don't know what it is about it and I don't like them. I don't like to have them near me. And I clearly have sleeping problems when it comes to them crawling on me or falling from the ceiling or whatever it is. So that is a weird and embarrassing thing about me, is that I wake up in the middle of the night, scream bloody murder, that there's a spider on me. Preston jumps up, thinks there's a person in the house,
Intruder.
goes for the gun. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. It was just a spider that I thought was on the ceiling. Everybody's fine.
An assumed spider.
Yeah. So I mean, that is a little crazy weird thing about me, is I don't like spiders and I dream about them.
Or have nightmares about them.
And I have nightmares
probably.
about them. Yeah, that's probably better. That's probably better.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite quote?
Oh God, my favorite quote, probably, my dad used to tell me something, which I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. When I went to college, he said, keep your head up, your nose clean, and your mouth shut. That's what he told me when I walked out the door. Keep your head up, keep your nose clean, and keep your mouth shut. And do I know exactly what he meant by that? No, but I kind of get the drift, like stay positive, don't get in trouble, and don't get into a situation you can't talk your way out of. It's like one of those things where, he was a man of few words, but that is one thing that he said to me. And I kind of, I took that and I ran with it. And I try to stay in my own lane. I try not to cause a lot of waves if I don't have to. I stay positive. I stay pleasant. I do everything with wholeheartedly the best that I can. I try to have fun in all the things I do. So I think that was probably one of the best things that my dad ever said, even though that it's a little weird when you think about it, but that's what he told me.
That's a great quote.
Yeah, I like that quote.
Well, Liz, that's all the questions I had. Do you have any other questions for Meg before we let her go today?
No, I think this was a super fun podcast interview. We don't get to see the amateur side of things so much, and it's always fun to pick each other's brains. So it was very fun chatting with you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yes, it's been great. You have great energy, and we love getting to chat with you. And before we let you go, do you want to provide any contact information or social media stuff? You can, you can't, if people either want to get a hold of you about anything or don't. It's a little different for us amateurs that aren't seeking or, trying to sell something or do businesses. So it's up to you.
Totally. Like if you want to follow me in my little Instagram world where my life and stories, my Instagram handle is Meg's a Good Girl. It was actually my AIM name back in the day for old enough to know what AIM is.
I love it.
That's how old I had an AIM that was Meg's a Good Girl, and I never changed it. As embarrassing as it is, I still have an email that's connected to that as well. But that's my Instagram handle. Y'all can definitely jump on and follow me along in this crazy world. And then my Facebook is just Meg DePalma Pye. You can easily find me on there. And I actually don't have the TikTok.
What?
I'm old and I don't have TikTok. I know it's cool. I watch Instagram Reels 4 days after they're on TikTok. I know it's the same thing. That's the only two social media things I have is just Instagram and Facebook. So if anyone wants to follow along, I would love the opportunity. I'll follow back and we can hang out, be friends.
Awesome. Well, I think this episode will probably air at least after Congress has started.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure that out.
Probably.
But anyway, so good luck at Congress this year. Very excited
Thank
for
you.
you and all of your
Thank you.
girls.
Fingers
and
crossed all the girls behave.
Yes.
Myself included.
Yeah, you too. And don't worry about the diagonals. It's not
Yeah.
that
That's right.
important.
It's okay. In the hot seat, you just look down and you pray and off you go.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. Thank you for your
Yes,
time today.
thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, girls. Thank you so much.
All right, that'll be your class. Bring them in and line them up.